All right, welcome everybody to the Sunday morning Science of Mind class with your host, Dr. Peter Weldis. And for those who are watching us on Facebook Live and want to join the interactive Zoom room, please click on the link in the description above. And as always, I'd like to encourage each and every one of you to visit us at CSLDallas.org. That way you can find all the upcoming events, activities, classes, workshops, and get your spiritual content fix. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Petra Weldis.
Yay, thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Ryan Brown, and we're happy to be here with you this morning, Sunday morning. You may notice we're back in the studio. We are still in the process of figuring out what's happening with our insurance company and the flood and all of that good stuff. But we are back in the studio thanks to modern technology. And I'm super excited about that, to be with you. I thought, because of the remodeling, everything's been moved around. I can't find a thing. So I actually wasn't sure where the Science of Mind book is that I normally use on a Sunday morning. So I thought I went looking for my Science of Mind, and this is the one I found before I found the one we've been using. This is the original Science of Mind that I started using in 1978. Just about every line is underlined in different colors for different reasons over different years. And so that's what it looks like when you've been reading it and studying it as long as I have. Of course, now we use the beautiful leather-bound edition because it looks very clean and perfect. And I really love using it. It's probably my fifth, maybe my sixth one that I'm on. And for those of you who haven't been with us much at the Science of Mind class, or maybe not for very long, we've been doing this for, gosh, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 years. I think this is our fifth time through the book in all that time. So we take a leisurely dive into the Science of Mind, both the theory of metaphysics, which of course is not new, it's ancient, and the application of it in our lives today. So we're in Principles of Successful Living on page 274 and 275. And we talked last week about the absolute and the relative in terms of our spiritual work, in terms of our spiritual mind treatment, not necessarily how we're going to deal with our partner or our child or our best friend. Sometimes being in the absolute can be really challenging when one is seeking to be compassionate or our partner needs for us to be that. Doesn't mean we can't be it in our minds, but we don't necessarily want to do that with individuals when they're really hurting or challenged. But we do it in our spiritual work, and we can do it in our spiritual work for them, and we can do it in our spiritual work for ourselves. And that is, we remove ourselves from the conditions, the circumstances, and we move into the absolute. So, so at the bottom of page 274, the top of page 275, no matter how apparent the treatment is, let me just back up again. This is the full sentence. He's quoting Thomas Troward. In such degree as the answer and the result is contingent upon any existent circumstances, any existing known fact, no matter how apparent, the treatment is not in the absolute. It is in the relative and necessarily conditioned by the contingent which is held in mind. This is the way we limit our work. We say, well, I can only get well if I get the right medicine. Well, I can only build a business if I can get the right loan. Well, I can only get a new job if I would have gone to school and gotten such and such a degree. Well, nobody's really going to love me because, I have so much trauma in my life, right? These are all the ways in which we limit ourselves. And when we do our spiritual work, we can do our spiritual work for our new business. But if our spiritual mind treatment includes the contingency, I have to get the loan, I have now limited the spiritual mind treatment. I've put it in terms of my answer is relative to this particular thing happening. This is really important. This is really important when we're talking about things that seem big to us, challenging to us, impossible to us, right? And this is why we can say that the answer to prayer always looks like a miracle. Well, it looks like a miracle because it seems to somehow violate or transcend the conditions, the existing circumstances, the facts. The fact is you have cancer and then all of a sudden you're well and you're in remission. The fact is you don't have any money and all of a sudden you've discovered a way to start your business, right? Because of moving into this absolute reality. So we go on here to have a concrete example. Suppose I am confronted with a problem and do not know the answer to it. Every known fact is against the working out of this problem. I say, I wish to treat this situation. I wish to handle it scientifically from the standpoint of spiritual science, which is what we're talking about. My treatment then must not consider the facts. The facts are relative. The treatment must become absolute. I wish to get it over into mind as a complete acceptance, not of the old fact, but of the new one. In such degree as this treatment partakes of the nature of reality, it is going to have power. All right, so let's just stop there for a minute. The facts are relative. The treatment must become absolute. My treatment must not consider the facts. So these are facts like inheritance, like the past, like the way it's always been, like I can't imagine it being any different than it is, right? Because we have the evidence of our senses. And what we need to do is to move away from the facts into the spiritual truth. Now, this is not going to fake facts. This is not going to, I'm simply going to deny the reality of the situation and I'm going to affirm whatever I want. No, this is affirming spiritual truth. This is moving into the absolute spiritual truth of things, which means that we're in alignment with life itself. This doesn't mean we can just affirm anything or we can wish things away by denying their severity or their difficulty. This is not what we're doing. Thomas Troward says it this way. We resolve a thing into a thought, we change the thought, and the law automatically changes the thing. So we can take anything from something in our own lives to something that is confronting us in the life of humanity. We can take our own experience of our health or our happiness or our success, and we can take the experiences of the pandemic, of racism, of climate change. We can take any of these things, resolve the fact, the situation, the facts, the conditions into thought. And what does that mean? It means looking at the idea that anything that's a condition is an outpicturing of a mental and spiritual cause, whether that's a conscious mental and spiritual cause or an unconscious mental and spiritual cause, or simply an acceptance of, well, this is just the way things are. This is just how we do it. This is the way it's always been, right? That's the old thought. Now we change that into a new thought. The absolute reality is love. Therefore, love must manifest itself between people. The absolute reality is health. Therefore, health must show up in the healing of this pandemic. Do you see? Then the outpicturing, the new thought is in the absolute. It's not conditioned upon anything. If we take take the pandemic, for instance, right? It's not conditioned on which vaccine you get. It's not conditioned on how quickly you get a vaccine. It's not conditioned on anything. What we affirm with the new thought is that wholeness and perfection and health is the absolute reality of life itself, and it must manifest itself through humanity. And everything that's needed for that must manifest itself. And the law must begin to bring that about into form. Unless, of course, there are conflicting thoughts. There are conflicting thoughts. When we have our own conflicting thoughts, I'm healthy. No, I'm not. I'm healthy. Oh God, I don't feel good. I'm healthy. Oh man, it's really bad. I'm healthy. Do you see? We're now giving conflicting thoughts. We're now bouncing back and forth between the old thought, which comes out of the condition, and the new thought, which comes out of the absolute. And we've seen that play out in the pandemic, of course. So in our work, we have to be steadfast on this new thought in the absolute. And again, not just affirming it because, well, I want to be successful and rich. No, we affirm things. We move our new thought into alignment with spiritual truth. Life is seeking to express itself. Not only should I be healthy, everybody should be healthy. Not only should I be happy, everybody should be happy. Not only should I care for the planet, but that's all of our jobs. Right. And so it is the moving of our thought process out of the relative condition. These conditions have to be met for the manifestation to happen. Do you see? Then we're just in the physical world shell game. We're just trying to make it happen, make it happen, make it happen, make it happen. Right. We're trying to figure it out. What can we do? What can we say? How can we pretend it's not happening, force it to happen, whatever? We're just manipulating. We're not really doing spiritual work. We're not doing spiritual work at that point. We're simply doing, I would say, egoic manipulation of what we can try to make happen. Right? When we move into the absolute, there's no effort in the law, taking the new thought and making it so. The effort is only in staying fixed on the new thought. That is, by the way, why it's called new thought, not because there's anything new about it, but because we are having a new thought. So it goes on here in this paragraph. The only limitation is the limitation that I have in my own consciousness about this move to the absolute. The limitation of treatment is not limitation in principle, but in performance. The thing itself, the absolute, of course, is not limited. As we have proven that principle is not bound by precedent, we go into that realm which says, behold, I make all things new. Not carrying with us the limited belief of the reason why it cannot be. Any denial we make in treatment is simply to conduct us to a place of greater affirmation. And so this is why this work, it requires maturity, right? It requires maturity. It requires our really seriously asking ourselves, what beliefs am I limiting my work with? Moving to that place of the absolute within my own consciousness, within the spiritual work that I am doing. Behold, I make all things new, not carrying with us the limited belief of the reason why it cannot. And I think this is really challenging for us sometimes because we have the evidence of our senses and we have the evidence of our past. So the evidence of our senses, right, show us where it hurts, show us how much money we don't have, show us how much limitation there might be in our culture or in our opportunity. And our past shows us, well, how it's always been, shows us the discrimination, racism, shows us the trauma of our childhood, shows us the fact that there's always been inequality or poverty or quite frankly, a disregard for our planet. And if we continually focus on why it cannot be, the end result cannot be, then we are limiting our spiritual work. We don't deny the past as a fact. We deny it as a truth. Yeah. Truth with a capital T. How do you know if it's truth with a capital T? Well, we talked a little bit about this in the Sunday celebration last week. We know it's a truth with a capital T because it can be universalized. That means we are perfectly willing for it to be a universal reality for each person and, quite frankly, for all beings. If that's not the case, it's not a truth with a capital T. It's either something we want or something we don't want or something we want to impose on others or something that we believe based on our senses or our conditional past. A truth is something that can be universalized, that we can imagine being true for all people and, quite frankly, for all beings. Health, wholeness, joy, peace, abundance. These are all things, qualities, experiences that we can actually imagine being universalized, that we would want not just for ourselves, but for everyone, for all beings. Do you see, this is how we check and make sure that our truth, that the truth with a capital T isn't just our truth, right? My truth is that I'm experiencing the situation in a certain way. My truth is I'm experiencing my body in a certain way. My truth is I'm experiencing you and the way that which you speak to me or act towards me or look at me and I don't like it or I like it, right? These are all my truths. Why? Because they're related to me. They're related to my personal experience. The truth with a capital T is something that we are willing to have universalized. And that not only would we be willing, we actually truthfully would want it, because then we're in alignment with life. We're in alignment with spirit, right? So of course we can want success in our business. Don't we want everybody to be successful? We want everybody to be successful. But when we want our success, disregarding other people's success, now we have a problem. If I want my success and I don't care that it actually impacts other people negatively, now we have a problem because we're no longer in alignment with universal truth with a capital T. Do you see? This is why the science of mind is not just a feel good, not just a get whatever you want, not just it's all about me and my life. No, this is a mature spirituality that understands the nature of reality and understands our embeddedness in the whole. And that we're a place where that is showing up and that we're a part of the furthering of life. Life with a capital L, all life, not just our life. But the other side of that coin is it's not all life at the detriment of our life. This is not martyrdom or sacrifice or, I'm just going to be about everybody else. I don't need anything. I don't need to worry about it. Right? No, it's nonsense. Love your neighbor as yourself. You could turn it around. Love yourself as your neighbor, right? That's what the as means, equally. And sometimes we need a little more. Sometimes our neighbor needs it a little more. Sometimes, right, there's a little bit of it's not necessarily a homeostasis all the time. We're constantly sort of managing that, but it's not me at all costs, nor is it them at all costs. This is a mature spirituality. This is a spirituality that really invites us into a deeper relationship with life itself. And how are we a place where life in its fullness, in its joy, in its expressiveness is being brought forward? You see, and that takes us into the realm of the absolute truth, not conditioned upon or related to the facts. Again, I want to stress, this is not fake news. This is not the making up of facts and calling them truth. This is the absolute moving into that place of universal truth, truth with a capital T. So any denial we make in treatment is simply to conduct us to a place of greater affirmation, a place of affirming these universal truths, this spiritual truth. And when we are doing that, we are completely free to be as happy and successful as we can imagine being, because we want that for everyone. And we want to be able to imagine everybody being free and successful and happy. For some people, that's, a big business, employing thousands and tens of thousands of people and, making a huge impact, positive impact on the world. And for someone else, it's doing a piece of art or taking care of the forest or working with climate change or taking plastic out of the seas or raising a grandchild or sitting here having this conversation with you. Do you see? In that sense, the universe isn't particular. You get to be particular. You get to be particular because you're an individualized expression of the universe. All right, so we're going to stop there before we go on to spirit and mental law, because it's also a really fabulous section. And we're going to stop there. And gosh, I don't have Ryan or Richard here in the studio with me. I'm all by myself. I'm really grateful Ryan's out there somewhere in internet land and that you are too. All right, so Ryan, I guess I can't really physically turn to you, but I can sort of metaphorically turn to you. See what's going on there.
Thank you, Peter. And I just want to let everybody know that I'm over here in the Bahamas, sitting on a nice beach, drinking a virgin daiquiri, and enjoying my Sunday morning Science of Mind class. Just kidding. I wish I was. And as always, I just want to say thank you guys for joining us. And welcome to all the folks that are new. I see a lot of new folks here, and we really appreciate you tuning in and finding out all about CSLDallas and this wonderful thing we call Science of Mind. And as always, if you guys are watching us once again on Facebook Live and you want to join us in the Zoom interactive room, please go ahead and hit the link in the description above. And we want to hear from you. So now is the time to put your questions and your comments within the comment section of either Facebook Live or over here in the Zoom room. And if you want to speak to Dr. Petra or myself, I mean, I never get any questions, but hey, if you'd like to speak to us, go ahead and hit the raise your hand icon, and then that way I can bring you into the room. And now I do want to let you guys know that for anybody who does comment, I keep it anonymous. That way we can be free to answer or ask any questions that we want. So as folks are gathering up the strength and the courage to hit the raise their hand icon, I'm going to read something that did come in as a question. It asks, some practitioners prefer not to have details about a prayer request so they can stay in the absolute, while some prefer to have more details so that they can be more specific in prayer. So Dr. Petra, what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, that is a great question. And that's true whether you go to a practitioner, somebody who's going to do spiritual mind treatment for you, or whether you're doing it for yourself. It's one of those cases where, like so many things in the science of mind, it resolves itself into a both and. There's no right way to do this. One isn't better than the other. The difference, I think, is how much of the detail is story. I don't want any of the story. But I do sometimes want to know, what specifically are we treating for? So I've had people come to me and say, I need treatment for the resolution. Actually, this happened many years ago. A woman came to me, I really want spiritual treatment for a resolution of a lawsuit. And first she sat down and she gave me, she started to give me a blow by blow of the lawsuit, like who said what and who did what and why she'd been wronged and how come she was a victim and how those other people were, just taking advantage of her. And so she blah, blah, blah. And then, and I said, that's really, I don't need all those details. What I want to know is what's the end result you're going for? And she said, oh no, you can't do the treatment until you read this stack of papers, so that you can understand what's going on. And I said to her, I tried to explain to her, I don't need to understand what's going on. I don't need to know what's happened in the past. What I need to know is what's the end result that you would like? Do you want it to be resolved at the highest and best good for all concerned? Do you want to have it dismissed? Do you want to have a specific outcome? And she was unable to answer that question because what she wanted me to know was the story about how terrible and awful and horrible everything was. So we had to do a fair amount of work to get out of the story and into the end result. And also to really talk about, it's not just, I really can't do treatment about getting back at them, because that wouldn't be in alignment with life. So what's a win-win that we could really do treatment for? It took us a while to get there, but then at the end, and so I categorically refused to get into any of the details because there was so much story attached to it, and stayed in just the end result. Now the end result is specific, right? The end result isn't in the absolute. So let's be clear about that. The end result is actually a specific, verifiable manifestation. I do my work in the absolute and know that this end result is based on spiritual truth and is not contingent upon a whole host of things that she seemed to think it was contingent upon. They need to see their error, and this lawyer has to do that, and that has to happen, and those people, and blah, 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 blah. It's like, oh, this is way too complicated. Now, so in that case, because there was so much story wrapped around it. On the other hand, sometimes I do actually want to know the particulars. I quite frankly, especially if somebody comes to me for health. Now, I don't need to know the story of all the conditions, all the details, all the ways the doctor said this is never going to get better, or blah, 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 blah. But I want to know what the end result is. And quite frankly, I do actually want to know, are we talking about a heart problem, or are we talking about the knee replacement? Right? These are entirely different aspects of the body. And I want to focus my treatment very specifically. So I need only enough detail that I can be very specific about the end result I'm going for. This applies to anything, whether it is the healing of a relationship or the building of a business or the whatever it is, right? So I need only enough detail to be specific. And I don't want any detail that has to do with a story, especially not a story that I can tell that I or the person is emotionally attached to, or quite frankly, uses as an excuse as to why things are limited the way that they are. Yeah. I think I've said everything there is to say about that at the moment, but man, it's a great question. And it's something to think about even when we do a treatment request or when we do a treatment for ourselves. Are we specific enough without outlining the conditions that have to be met or changed? Do you see? It's the along the way stuff. that we try not to get caught in? It's a great question. I hope that helps to answer it. Ryan, I'll come back to you.
All right, thanks for that clarification. So I'm just waiting for somebody to raise their hand. It looks like we don't have a lot of questions out there, but I do have some in the chat, but we would really love to hear from you guys here in the Zoom room. So the next question that I have is, how has your understanding of the science of mind changed with reading it over these 5 pastimes? And I know you've read it plenty more times than that, but I guess it generally speaking, how has your thoughts about it changed every time you read it?
Well, that is an interesting question, isn't it? Every time I read it, let's see, a number of things happen. One, I see things that I didn't see before. Two, things that I saw before that I kind of went, yeah, okay, got that. All of a sudden bloom with entirely new meaning. Like I get it at such a different level. Like, oh, that's what this is all about. That's what this is talking about. I also notice that my emphasis shifts from time to time reading it in terms of what seems particularly pertinent to myself, to all of us, to where we are in our moment in time, in our nation, in our culture. And every time I read it, I'm re-enrolled. Like, yeah, this it makes so much sense to me. And not only does it make sense to me, but each time I've read it, I've had corroborating experiences, right? So when I read things, I'm like, yeah, I had that experience. Oh yeah, and I had that experience of limitation too. Oh yeah, I've done that. Or, oh, I've had that opening moment. And so this is why, for me, I just keep going over it and over it and over again. There's lots of other Ernest Holmes writings that are equally as amazing. And you can see a trajectory in Ernest Holmes's writings in The Science of Mind, from a very practical spirituality, which we find in the Science of Mind textbook, to a more, what shall we say, mystical expression of it. But the understanding of the love and the law never changes. And I love seeing the way it morphs, which allows each one of us to take it up in the way that is that resonates to our particular sensibility, right? Some of us are a little more devotional, we need a little more feeling around the experience of the love of life, or life loving us. Some of us are very scientific, and we need it to be very logical. We need it to make sense to us. Some of us are very free-spirited, and we just want to be creative, and we just want to go for it, right? And we find all of that. And the more that I read it, the more of those things that I find, and the more I see how it's all woven together. And ultimately, we want to have all of that. We want to have all of that available to us as individuals, so that we can be in the experience, the communing with the one, and we can be very clear in our spiritual mind treatment, and we can be very free with our creativity. And then it's no longer predicated on our personality or our own, the way in which we showed up in this particular lifetime, in this particular form, but we have the whole of reality available to us. So that's why we keep doing it. We keep going deeper and deeper. And for new folks, if you're new with us, right, we just start right where you are. We just start with beginning to understand a new way of thinking about the nature of reality without a lot of trappings, right? Whether they're esoteric trappings or whether they're religious trappings, just trying to move all of that aside and come to a very sane, healthy, open exploration of the nature of reality. Yeah, so that's what I would say about that. Thanks for the question. So we can go on, Ryan, if we don't have any more questions, but I will check in with you one more time.
Well, we do. We have a couple people who've raised their hand. So I'll just go in the order here. We've got about 4 people, it looks like, who want to
Great.
speak.
Yay.
So, Connie, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Hi, Connie. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Reverend Petra. Good morning, everybody. This is amazing. You always seem to speak to my whatever is going on for me. It's great. Um, right now, I'm in the process of integrating um, uh, my past conditioning uh, with, well, no, I'm integrating being kind and gentle and compassionate and understanding and speaking my truth and being authentic. And,
Uh-huh.
yeah, and those two, boy, they're big. Those two groups, yeah. Now, just in a quick example, I have a new student who really annoys me. Just her way of being, it really annoys me. And uh, so one thing I realize is I really have to take good care of myself, enough rest, and all that to be in good shape to deal with it. But also, yeah, do you have some suggestions? Integrating, speaking my truth, being authentic, setting my boundaries, I can't let her trample all over me. And
Right.
yet be kind and gentle and understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, Connie, I mean, that's a really great comment. It's a really great question. I think it is something that we tend to swing the pendulum back and forth, right? We're by God going to speak our truth, come hell or high water, or I'm going to be just kind and compassionate and just love the other person. And, and of course, the balance of the two is not, again, it's not homeostasis. I used to think balance was you could get your teeter-totter of life perfectly balanced and you just stood in the middle and you're constantly doing this, like trying to keep it in balance. And well, I always fell off my teeter-totter, so that just did not work for me. And I think what balance really is being able to run from one end of the teeter-totter to the other as is needed, as is appropriate. Right? So kindness and compassion comes in with tone of voice, with a recognition that this is a child of God. This is an expression of love and light, just like we are. We've probably done some of those annoying things ourselves. And we can maybe, without psychoanalyzing or thinking that we know that person, like we're, we can see into their psyche, but we know some of the kinds of things that can motivate certain kinds of behaviors. And so we can have compassion, and we can compassionately then also say, and I am going to ask you to let me finish my sentence before you ask a question, or I am going to ask you to let the whole thought come through and for you to spend some time with it before you start debating whether it's correct or not. I'm going to ask you now, please, to honor the rest of the group because they too have questions and comments, right? These are all ways in which holding boundaries can be done while still recognizing that some people they're unconscious of the way their behavior reflects beliefs, attitudes, and ways of being in the world that they were raised with and that really don't get them the results they want. And so it's and so more than anything else, right, Connie, it's an opportunity for us to practice. And this is what it means to be enlightened. It means to be conscious, to try to be as conscious as possible, to ask what is needed from me in this moment. How do I choose to show up? How is my showing up in alignment with the spiritual truth of who I am? And we're not always going to do it perfectly. And we're going to fall on one side or the other, maybe a little more than we'd like, as we kind of learn how to manage that. So I hope that's helpful to you, Connie. And I think the last thing I would say is that curiosity and a soft heart really help rather than a defensiveness or a need to be right. Speaking from many years of painful personal experience. Oh, man. All right. Well, I hope that's helpful. Ryan?
All right, so I want to call in Jeff Fritz. Jeff, you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Hey, Jeff.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ryan.
Good morning, CSLDallas General.
Right. And I have a question for you, but I won't ask it right now.
Yeah, we'll
idea.
talk later.
Peter, this lesson is particularly awkward for me. And I'll say I have a bit of a bias against compartmentalization. But it feels like we're at a point where we almost can't allow the natural human experience of life to do an effective absolute science of mind treatment. And I know that that's an awkward way of saying this, but it's almost as though I have to be able to separate myself and the way that my neurons work from what I know is a goal to be able to reach the absolute. Reaching the absolute is it's almost as though I am delving into the nature of me that is not human. I know that that's sort of true. I mean, I accept that, but it gives me so much compassion for all of the people that try and understand New Thought, try and understand science of mind, and find it to be a very unnatural experience of having to seek the absolute when we're helping a situation. So I don't know if this is even something you want to deal with, but it just is awkward for me, and it's hard to let go of the circumstance that you're saying we acknowledge, or the condition that we say we acknowledge, and then just flip a switch, compartmentalize, and we now are in the absolute. So I'm flipping the switch, and I'm asking you to speak from the absolute. I don't know how you'll do it.
Well, no, it's a great question, right? And so there's two fundamental assumptions, Jeff, that I'm going to play back to you, and then I'm going to invite you to spend some time with, right? That are the challenge here. First of all, that the idea that we're compartmentalizing. So if there's a oneness and we're whole beings, we're not compartmentalizing anything. What we are doing is we are deciding which aspect of life is causal. So, for instance, we might see that the stream outside our house is dirty. So what do? We go upstream and we look for where is the dirt or the pollution coming from. Because we know the water itself, its absolute quality is actually clear, not dirty. And I mean dirty, I guess I'm using the word polluted, or, maybe there's a bunch of mud coming in and we don't know where. And so what we do is we look for the cause. And we know the absolute quality of the stream is actually beautiful and clear. And sure, it gets muddy when there's a big rainstorm, but then it clears back out again. And it certainly shouldn't be filled with pollutions. And so we're not compartmentalizing the dirty from the clear. What we're doing is saying the dirty doesn't belong. And it's not actually part of the truth of the clear water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go find the cause for the dirty water, or we can do that and we can shut the dirty water off. But what we really want to do in the spiritual point of view, that's the denial. We deny that there is anything within the inherent nature of the water that would cause it to want to be polluted, that would cause it to draw pollutions to it. The pollutions are actually a false idea about what the water should be like. And so in the absolute, what we do is we affirm and expect the clear quality of the water to actually be the spiritual truth and to then manifest itself. And so we put a new cause in motion, which is a whole lot more clear water. And of course, we know, the old thing, if you drop and drop and drop clear water into a dirty glass, eventually the water will be clear because no more dirty water is being added. And so that's what it means to turn away from the condition. Not that we don't have compassion for people that have the condition. Of course we do, because we ourselves have had the condition. But are we going to keep causing it? That is always the question. It's not the condition that we're not compassionate about. Of course we are. It's, are we going to keep causing the condition? And again, I said, and I make this the caveat all the time, we are not in the absolute when we're sitting with someone holding their hand because they're having, a really, really challenging time with their life. We only do it with other people when they ask for it, want it, are really ready to have that conversation. It's not our business to be in the absolute with someone who's not doesn't want to live their life that way. So we're not saying that. And so what we're really compartmentalizing is our need to fix people. That's what we're really compartmentalizing. I only offer another way of looking at things, or a spiritual way of looking at things, or a causal way of looking at things, if someone's actually really interested and wants to make a change. If they don't, that my only option, and actually my truthful response, is to be compassionate, because there have been times when I haven't wanted to change. I just wanted to have a temper tantrum or be a victim. I didn't want to take responsibility. And not even consciously not wanted to take responsibility, but so I would propose to you that it's not compartmentalizing. It has everything to do with where we're placing cause. And I would propose to you that the human condition should be clear water. That is the whole point. It should be life for life. And when it's polluted, there is in fact something wrong, and it should be unpolluted. Now, again, it's not my opinion about how your life should be unpolluted. I have to do that work for myself. I can't even see half of the pollution that I have going on back here. But the human condition should be a reflection of our spiritual joy. And it doesn't mean that we don't have, emotions and experiences, but they should be savored, and we should understand that our human experience is come to pass, hasn't come to stay. Our grief doesn't stay, our joy doesn't stay, our bliss doesn't stay, our success, everything on the human experience is constantly changing. What's absolute is the spiritual truth, which is that we should be savoring our life and expressing who we are. And so if our experiences are keeping us from expressing who we are, don't you think we would want to support each other in having more ability to express who we are? So this is where compassion for someone else's experience can fall into keeping them stuck in that experience in our own minds. Like, that's just so terrible. That's just so terrible. We're just adding to how terrible it is. Now, you don't have to say those words out loud to somebody else. You can actually sit and hold their hand and go, wow, that's really terrible. While in your own mind going, and the spiritual truth is there is a power and a presence that knows how to shift this. There's a power and a presence that knows how to turn this around. And see, I have never understood how that's not compassionate. That seems like the height of compassion to me, to not jump in the hole with you and to believe that you're now stuck in that place or victimized by that place, or that you yourself are not capable of actually being raised out of that. The deepest compassion I have is to see your light and your possibility and your magnificence. That's the truth. And that seems so real to me. That's not the human condition. That's us loving our grandchildren and hiking in the mountains and going for something that causes us blood, sweat, and tears for years, and building businesses and having, So I just, yeah, so I just invite us to imagine what we really think compassion means. And ultimately, the last thing that I want to say, Jeff, which I think is really important, you've hit the nail on the head. We are so unwilling to give up our humanness as if that were our only identity. And we are wedded to it. And it is such a limitation. It's just the cloak we wear. The truth is, your identity is spiritual. And that's the causal reality. But your spiritual identity can't actually have an experience of life unless it's having this experience of life in this plane of existence. This is the experience of life. So that would be like saying, I am my car. I am my house. I am my job. I am my body. I'm not any of these things. I'm a spiritual being. I have a house and a car and a body and love and relationships and work and all of these things, but they aren't me. They aren't the I that I am. And so, yes, actually, the final analysis, which can be very challenging, is I don't want to give up my humanness. Why? Because I don't want to give up my excuses and I don't want to give up my limitations. I don't want to see myself as a magnificent being of light. And I don't want to live the responsibility that it takes to be as conscious as I possibly can, to be compassionate, to be truthful, to be in integrity, to recognize that everything I do sets something in motion. Everything I think sets something in motion. Am I setting in motion the healing of racism? Am I setting in motion pollution for the planet? Am I setting in motion my granddaughter having an experience of herself as a radiant, magnificent being of love and light? Am I setting in motion compassion for my beloved who happens to be homesick today? Am I setting in motion a willingness to, feed her soup and tea? Or am I too busy being successful and having a life of my own? Do you see? Ultimately, when I know my spiritual truth, everything becomes important. Every moment is a causal moment, which is why the Buddhists teach mindfulness, right? It's not just to be present, but it's to be mindful of the present and what causal reality am I impacting in this moment? Is it in alignment with life, with love, with truth, or am I just reacting? Am I just, swimming in the soup? You ask a really important question, Jeff, and I think all of us have to struggle with this very thing. Who am I? And if I'm a spiritual being, who are you? You're a spiritual being too. And that is the absolute truth. In the midst of the human lives that we are having, enjoying, suffering under, experiencing, and growing? It's a great question. Thank you so much, Jeff. I think we had one more, Ryan. I don't know if we have time, so I'm going to turn to you.
Yeah, we're kind of out of time and we need to get ready for our Sunday celebration, which is coming up next. So for everybody who is watching us here right now on Facebook Live or in the Zoom room, I really want to encourage you to be a part of our Sunday celebration. We have a lot of more juicy stuff to give you guys. So I'm going to call it good right there. Peter, would you like to add anything before we head out?
I do want to say we've got special music from Gary Lynn Floyd for our Sunday celebration, since everything is on Zoom right now, since of our building. Next week, we have music from Amy Bishop, and the week after that from Karen Drucker. So while we're in this Zoom environment again, we're bringing you the best of our New Thought musicians. So do join us for the Sunday celebration. We'll see you in just a little while, or join us anytime throughout the week. Bye for now.